Many see the United States as an observer, not necessarily as an active player in Central Asia. They say that, well, Russia has economic and political leverage, China is bringing billions of dollars, and I'm sure you have heard this before, and this economic investment could translate into a political leverage eventually. But what is U.S. bringing, they say? What is U.S. doing that will affect the lives of people in real terms?
Right. I think that it is a good thing that America does not have a boundary, a land boundary with Uzbekistan. We don't have a stake in your territory. We're not seeking to cast our influence over you. Instead, I mean, America has always stood for the principles of Uzbekistan and the countries of the former Soviet Union to be free, to be sovereign, to have their territory respected, the integrity of its territory respected. And that is useful to Uzbekistan as it navigates its relations. We do not see a relationship with the United States coming at the expense of any other relationship that Uzbekistan enjoys. Uzbekistan, as a landlocked country, has to have a multi-vector foreign policy, has to build relations with its neighbors and take advantage of opportunities that that emerge. And we understand that. I think, because we're not located in the region, we're a rather benign force when it comes to partnering for reform and economic development. But to say that we're not engaged in the region, I think, is a complete mischaracterization. We are engaged in the longest running war that America has participated in. We have lost lives and material losses, next door in Afghanistan. The region has been a preoccupation, of the last 4 or 5 presidents. And so very much Central Asia features. And so you've seen not just the phone call between your president and President Trump, but the recent visit of President Nazarbayev, the high-level engagements by Secretary Tillerson. Central Asia matters as a region and as an important country in Central Asia. Uzbekistan will be critical to any regional effort at increasing stability and prosperity.
This has been an unconventional administration in many ways. Should we expect any unconventional approaches to the region in the near future?
I think, but there's much about our interests in Central Asia that are conventional. Again, our interest in a stable and secure Central Asia that's growing and prospering. And so those long time honored security interests of the United States are going to remain constant. We are always looking for new ways to engage. And I think we live in a new world today. Social media, with both the good and the bad. I mean, the ability to connect people to people in ways that we could not have imagined before, but also the dark side of that connection, the ability of evil groups to recruit, through internet, and the rise of, violent extremism and nihilist organizations that have attracted young people from around the world, including Central Asia. So we have to deal with everything that's being thrown at us by our changing times. And that's another very important area for cooperation between our countries.
Speaking of that, we see the relationship sour with Pakistan. And when there is conversation about this in Washington, Central Asia comes up as the best alternative in terms of supply routes. And we know that the Northern Distribution Network never fully stopped functioning. Should we expect any new deals or maybe agreements or initiatives in the near future?
I think we're always looking to maintain our trade relations and our transport relations with countries of the region. But I would say when it comes to Pakistan, we see Pakistan as a very important part of the solution to stability in Afghanistan. And the goal of the South Asia strategy is to work with Pakistan to see that its interests are reflected and met at a negotiating table at the same time that we're able to push or entice or facilitate the Taliban's own participation in a negotiation. So I wouldn't read, our current relationship with Pakistan as suggesting that we want to walk away from that relationship. To the contrary, we very much want to have a partnership with Pakistan against all violent extremist organizations. I think Central Asia and the Central Asian leaders and the Uzbek leadership have always opposed violent extremism. They've been very concerned about the prospect or the possibility of terrorist organizations taking root. There are obvious areas, overlapping interests that we have in sharing information and better understanding the phenomenon. Because as we defeat, for instance, ISIS in Iraq and Syria, none of us can afford for the remnants of those organizations to take root elsewhere. We have to be on guard. We have to have the information sharing arrangements in place and the law enforcement relationships in place to be able to counter it. But more than that, we have to understand the phenomenon and I think come to a better understanding of why young people in particular have been attracted, to these violent nihilistic creeds. And so, this is something that we share and that the global community shares. And under our own C5 programs in the region, counterterrorism and countering violent extremism is an important pillar.
Speaking of U.S. interests and the mutual interests, obviously, we saw how the relationship with Kyrgyzstan suffered under the Russian influence. And I know you're a Russia expert, you've spent a lot of time focusing on Russia. What kind of tools or mechanisms, levers do you have to protect your interests in the region?
I think our relationship with the Kyrgyz Republic, the United States has always stood for the Kyrgyz Republic's independence and territorial integrity, and has invested significantly in trying to assist the Kyrgyz government increase its own capacity, to work with civil society and media, to increase those institutions that are the guarantors of democracy. I think we all recognize that the Kyrgyz Republic has managed democratic transitions. It's made important progress in its own political evolution, and certainly we desire a productive and constructive relationship with the Kyrgyz Republic. At one point, we had the Manas Air Base, which was an important contribution to the northern distribution network. But even without the air base, I think we see the Kyrgyz Republic's contribution to the region as being essential. I mean, when we talk about, again, energy sharing and energy cooperation, it's all 5 countries of the region working together that are going to maximize the potential of any one individual country. And I know Uzbekistan sort of feels this intimately, with the situation of the enclaves and the borders. You can't, even as you build your own institutions, your relations with your neighbors are important. And so we would like to help facilitate those relations. And again, I think what we bring most to the table is the fact that we aren't living in your neighborhood.
So U.S. will continue to be a unique player as far as
I think so.
As far as Washington is concerned.